Oh, you have these things that get smuggled into the text of the Quran, but they're jumbled. They're characters that are in some places that shouldn't be in others. Haman, who is from the book of Esther, ends up in the Exodus story as the right-hand man to Pharaoh. Well, there are hundreds of years between the Persian story of Esther and the Egyptian story of Moses and Pharaoh. So there's confusion and conflation that's going on. And I was, at least when I was reading the Quran early on, aware of the biblical narratives. And so when I'm reading the Quran and I'm reading some of the Quran's versions of these stories, it's not hard to pick up on where they're just not right.
Here's another clear example of how he's like jumbling and mixing everything up, right? So you have this Haman that he talks about in the story of Esther, who's a Persian minister, right? You have this entire story about him. Then you have the name Haman mentioned in the Quran as the minister of Pharaoh. And he says, look, there is a mix-up. Basically, the person copying is mixing up. You're the one who's mixing up. Just because two people have the same name doesn't mean the Quran is talking about the person. Just because my name is Muhammad Ali and the boxer is called Muhammad Ali, that doesn't mean we're the same person. Or if someone writing about Muhammad Ali, then he's confusing me with the boxer. Right? This is just common sense. Just because there's two similar names doesn't mean that there is a mix-up. Now, the Quran mentions Haman as a minister of Pharaoh, and it doesn't have a story about him. Now, when you go to this Haman in the book of Esther, the story is completely different. Because in the Quran, Haman is a minister of Pharaoh. Pharaoh is the one who's doing the evil, and he's just commanding his minister to build for him. So he's a minister who's dealing with architecture and building, and he said to him, build me a specific thing. This is his entire role here. This is what the verse is mentioning about him in the Quran. This is his role. Now, when you go to the Bible and you look at this Persian minister, there's an entire story about him being an evil guy who's plotting to basically eliminate all the Jews or something like that. And he plots a specific story, and then Esther kind of tells the king about him, and he's captured and he's executed and whatever. So he's the villain in the story. He's the main villain in the story. He's not Haman in the Quran is not the villain in the story. He's just a minister of building that Pharaoh tells him to do a specific thing. So clearly there's no mixing up happening here. It's you trying to pretend that there is a mixing up happening just because two people have the same name.